that you can be with us tonight, Dawn.
I'm really excited to be here as well.
And I will. So if you out there could please start writing if there's something or from me, just so that we can have a conversation on what matters most to you and not what matters most to us. So please start out by giving some questions. But Don, let me ask you a startup question. Now you're 2 months in your term as past president, which I know is always wonderful to be back at home and trying to get a normal life and not having someone controlling your schedule 24/7. So how has the first month been as a past president?
It's been good. It's been restful for sure. And yes, it's nice to be at home, have a little bit more control over, I guess, my day and my schedule. Although I do miss, I miss being with the members. I miss the experiences and meeting the members, being at our projects. That's always energizing, no matter how tired you are or how far you've traveled. It's always so energizing and inspiring. So I do miss that part of it. But yeah, so far, my first almost 2.5 months being a past president have been good so far.
Well, I can see we have both. We have Natasha, GCI Vice President, with us. We have several others out there. And more coming in all the time. So let's continue, Don. You traveled last year. How many countries approximately did you visit last year?
I was in 58 different countries last year.
Wow, that's a lot. And yeah, I know from my travels, there's a lot of differences between the national organizations. And what as an American JC, what kind of struck you the most when you were traveling? What was impressing you the most or surprising you the most when you traveled and seeing how other national organizations are run?
I think honestly, what struck me is that despite our cultures, how similarities there are between all of us. The way the types of projects that we do may be different. The way that we hold our meetings may be different. The customs that we have may be different. But the way that we all care about our communities, the way that we are trying to make a difference in our communities, make connections in our communities is always the same. And it struck me because we always, I think we have a tendency to think as individuals, as members, as chapters, as national organizations, that we're somehow so completely different or alienated from everybody else around the world. And what I'm doing in my chapter or in my town doesn't affect anybody else, the ultimate goal or anything like that. And that's simply just not true, that we really are connected in what we do, in the types of projects that we do, in the initiatives that we advocate on behalf of, that really does create that global network and that global movement that we're a part of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I often say that when you travel a lot, the thing that really strikes you the most, especially when you're with a lot of people, is all the similarities, not the differences. And I think that's great, and that's for me, that also gives a lot of hope to the world, because we think alike. We love our kids, we love our families, we love to make a difference, no matter if it's here in Denmark or in the US or Paraguay or in Malta or wherever we are in the world. It's always the same that people actually care about, and it's the small things that actually separates us, which is great. Dawn, let me take you through the different areas of JCI, because you've traveled to. We have a lot of Europeans with us tonight, but we also have people from Africa. I see some people from Asia, so we have a little bit from everywhere. And most of them are national officers, national presidents, or some aspiring to be. And what I would like you to, if you could tell us, if you should, from your travels, what would you say that for you would be the best practices of national organizations? I mean, how do they? What is the best way to operate a national organization from your experience? And I know that there is difference between a small and a medium size and a large ones, but maybe you can take some examples from your travels from all three of them.
Yeah. The one thing that I saw, that I always noticed from the most active and the most engaged national organizations, was that they were also engaged internationally. And they attended the area conferences, they attended the World Congress, they attended other area conferences or other national organizations, national conventions, or whatever it is, but were active internationally. And that helped to give them a perspective of the larger world, I think, and helps, because sometimes we get stuck in that tunnel vision of what I'm doing in my country and in my community, and we forget about everything else. And so those national organizations that are active internationally, and are able to create a sense of excitement and engagement on the international level. And so it's not just the national president that's traveling, but it's the national board, it's local presidents, it's other members that are also traveling and creating this community that travels together, brings that flavor back home as well. And I know in some areas of the world, it's much more expensive and much more prohibitive in terms of resources and logistics and flights and everything else. And so I understand the challenges of that, of course, having traveled areas of the world. I understand frustrations when I was trying to travel in different areas. But if there is a way that you can be engaged internationally, and again, it doesn't even mean that you have to go to the area conference, but if you could go to a neighboring national organization, or to, create, Europe is very good at having regional events. And again, that creates a sense of community and connection that you're not alone. Another thing that I noticed in national organizations is that if the national organization has a strong connection, the national officers are able to create a strong connection with, especially the local presidents, then that, creates a line of communication that enables you to share your message, enables you to share just general information, but also, again, creates that connection and that sense of community within your national organization. Because you as a national organization can feel isolated, chapters can feel isolated, even in a country like Japan that has 700 national organizations. There are chapters that can feel isolated if they're not connected, if there's not a strong connection to their national officers. So for me, I would say those are the two best practices that I saw, regardless of the size of a national organization, whether you're small with 2 chapters like Monaco, or you have 700 chapters like Japan.
What is I noticed when I traveled, at least, and from my experience with a lot of national organizations, that breaking the 200 members boundary is really difficult. It's really difficult for most national organizations. They easily grow to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters, and they get maybe 200 members. But really breaking that and getting beyond 200 members is only a few national organizations that's actually has done that within the last 20 years. What would you say? What would be your advice to those who says, well, we have the potential. We are 200 members in Romania or Bulgaria or countries that should be or could be, 1,000, and maybe even Russia with could be tens and tens of thousands of members. What would be your advice to them to kind of go from being a small business to a larger size business?
Well, yeah, that's always the challenge. And just like in business, we have dreams of growing fast, but growing fast is not always sustainable. So the first thing I would say is to be careful strategic and pick communities that that you can support that new local organization, because it's very different to start a new local organization and have it be successful than it is to keep a local organization being successful. It takes a different type of individual to start a local organization, a different type of group of people to start a new local organization than it does to be an officers for an existing local organization. The other thing I would say is that sometimes we get caught up in the formality of the structure of our organizations, from our national boards and our local boards. And we think we have to have all of these officer positions on our national board and all of these officer positions on our local boards to be successful, regardless of how many people we have in our local or our national organization. And when you have a board of directors that's the same in 100-person national organization, that's the same in a 2,000 member national organization, it doesn't work, because your people get burnout and you have people who just continue to kind of recycle themselves through the same position or through different positions, and they get frustrated and they get burnout. And so you to really look at your national organization and say, what positions do we need? What positions are vital to the sustaining our national organization and growing our national organization, and what is nice? What's an extra that we would like to have if we had the people to do it, but we don't absolutely have to have. And in your local organizations, do the same thing, because again, one of the things we struggle with the most is that pipeline of leadership, and having people that are willing and ready to step up to be a national, even into our international organization, being vice presidents, EVPs, and even into the role of JCI president. That we struggle with that pipeline of leadership. And I know, Lars, that's something that you're very passionate about, is developing that pipeline of leadership and understanding what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And so for a national organization, I would just say, don't be afraid to say, have 4 board this year. And that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you have 100 members, if you have 5 chapters, 4 chapters, 100 members, 120 members, frankly, you probably don't need more than 3 or 4 people on your national board to really service them and then do the work. And then you have extra people. And don't forget about the help that you have in the organization, your director, from your assigned vice president, from your EVP, and there's support staff at our JCI headquarters office that can offer you marketing support, that can help frankly can even help you strategize, can help you analyze, find information about new communities that you might want to go into, and all these sorts of things. And so you can call, you can have a conversation with them. You can do their resources. And if you don't even know what's available and you don't know who to ask, just send me an email, send your assigned vice president an email, your area director in Europe, it's Chris, whoever it is, just say, hey, this is something I want to do and I don't know how to do it. So who should I talk to? And we'll for sure help you try and find the right individual and the right resources to help support you so that you can grow sustainably. And we don't have these chapters that we start that are really excited and get going for a year or two and then support, and then they filter out and they die after a year or two, and then you're trying to go back in and restart it again and again and again, and it's just this continuing cycle of energy that's just not productive.
No, it's one of the national organizations that has impressed me the most is JCI Syria, and it's in the plan that we will have a visit from them here at this forum in this forum in a couple of months. They started in 2004, and they grew to 800, 1,200 members within a very short time. And one of the things that I saw when I visited them and when I worked with them is that they were immensely good at knowing what to do, and especially knowing what not to do. And the main focus for them was to make really strong, independent, local organizations and grow from there. And they also experienced that the more they did on a national level, the weaker the local organizations actually became. So their focus was really starting great local organization that very quickly grew to, JCI Damascus was 250 members and Homs was 180 members. So they really grew very fast and had a lot of great local organizations that could kind of support it. And we also saw that when the war came, JCI Aleppo, of course, was almost folding, but they are almost back to 100 members, even though the ceasefire is less than 8 months old. So they really come back fast and do things because, in my opinion, they have the right focus. I've always said that a national organization actually only have two jobs, which is one, to start chapters, and number two is to really make them strong. And if you just do that job well, you don't have to do anything else. The chapters will organize all the trainings, and they will do the events, and they will do, you can ask them to do a national convention. You don't have to do anything as a national organization. So it's really this strong foundation of independently strong local organizations, and I absolutely agree with you that it needs to be sustainable in a very, very good way. Ladies and gentlemen out there, we would love to have some questions for you. We see that Mohamedou and Nadia and Natasha has found the chat room, so please enter the chat. It's on your right side of the screen. Sylvie is there too. We would love to have some questions for you, so it doesn't just become Dawn and my interests that will be in this discussion, but also answering some of the questions that you might have out there. And I know Dawn well enough that you can ask her anything. She might not be able to answer, and it's the same for me, but we would absolutely try our best to give an honest answer to the questions you have out there. Dawn, well, in your title, you're past president, but you actually also have a kind of future thing this year, since you're leading the SPC that has done a lot of work. I know that you probably can't you can't disclose your everything or anything from the discussions, but what would you say is your immediate thoughts that you have on the direction of the organization?
Well, I think that the direction, the strategic was the intense week. A very intense full days that we had with the full committee, and
who's almost on the committee?
There's 12 people on the committee.
Okay.
Myself and President Brian and SG Ari. And then from Europe, 2 vice presidents from last year, Celine from France and Victor from Iceland. From the Americas, current executive vice president Andres from Colombia, and a national officer from Africa. We have past EVP Shepo. He was also the Pieces Possible committee chair last year, and national president from last year, Harira from Mali. And then from Asia Pacific, we have last year's local president from JCI Tokyo, Mami. We have a past JCI vice president from Sri Lanka, Amzad, and a past executive vice president from Australia, Natalie. So those are the members on the committee. So we have a range of experience, a range of ages, from local connections to international experience, big countries, small countries, and a mix of everything. Really a good discussions that we had. And the current strategic plan is, the new strategic plan, the upcoming strategic plan, is based off of building from the foundation of this current strategic plan. So at first glance, it honestly might look similar, but it's not. The committee did decide to maintain the 5 key words for consistency, for continuity, and to kind of accelerate the growth and the opportunities that we have created in the last 5 years. So don't be fooled by looking at those at that larger structure and thinking, oh, it's the same thing as the current plan, because it's not. The identifying statements for each of the 5 words is different. The strategies underneath each of the 5 words are different, about accelerating the path that we're on, really focusing on JCI as being a place where young people are drawn to, where young people come to be recognized, to be able to share their voice, to work with other young people, to gain the skills that they need to be successful individuals in business and policy, whatever it is that they're doing. And also being cognizant of the fact that we are in a rapidly changing world. And as an organization, internationally, nationally, and locally, we have to respond to that. We have to adapt to that. And we haven't done a very good job always of doing that. And to continue to be relevant, to continue to capitalize on some of the opportunities that have come to us, we have to be agile. We have to be adaptable, and we have to capitalize on what's out there, on the technology resources that are out there, the fact that young people today are more connected than ever before, access to them than ever before, and how do we capitalize on that? How do we hone that? How do we kind of filter that so that they come to us, and that we can help be their advocates, or give them a platform to be an advocate for whatever it is that they are interested in advocating for. So those ideas or thoughts that came out of the Strategic Planning Committee.
Yeah. Well, we have a question from Sylvie. Would love some more questions. The questions we have from Sylvie is what actions will make local organizations strong? I will get back to that, at least some to it, and then we can have Don's thought on that as well. But I would like to ask you on the strategic plan. Did you? I remember I was part of the strategic planning commission like 1 trillion years ago, or at least preparing it. I was not part of it, but I was preparing it. And one of the things I did was a comparison study between JCI and other organizations, and JCI still think that we can be the best and still be, cheap, not just cheap, but really, 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 really cheap. I remember when I was studying this 12, 14 years ago, JCI had a juice structure of $10.50 per member, and the Rotary had 75. Our other competitors were at a minimum. The average was 50 for organizations that we could compare us with. Even the Boy Scouts were more expensive than JCI. Have you had any discussions on starting to think about that value costs money, and that if we really want to create something that is fantastic for our members, we need to pay what the actual cost is for what we expect?
Well, yeah. So we did not have an in-depth conversation about that. No, we did look at that as one of the comparison factors as we were looking at other. What focused on with this plan, because ultimately the idea of the dues or how much we pay or how much we pay for our events is not a function of the strategic planning committee. Of course, that discussion has to start with either the national presidents or the executive committee. We can make recommendations, but it's not our function to do that. We read a book called Forces for Good, and it looked at several high-performing nonprofits. They were based in the U.S. because it was a book based in the U.S., but the ideas that they looked at were not specific to the U.S. They were universal ideas, and looked at what were the 6 key things that made each of those high-performing nonprofits. And they looked at them of the financial crisis in the early 2000s, and then after they did a follow-up in 2012, and looked to see how did these organizations fare. Were they good just because the times were good and finances were good, or did they sustain through kind of the challenges that we all lived through? And they found that ultimately these organizations were still high-performing organizations in the fields that they were active in, and looked at things that they weren't necessarily the largest organizations or the most expensive organizations or the most well-known organizations, but it looked at the impact that they had in the industries or in the communities or in the space that they were in. And so if it was a housing organization, did they affect the way that housing for poor people for less advantaged individuals had access to housing or had opportunities to find housing? If it was a food organization, the same types of things, or sharing information, or
something happened to your sound. Is it okay with you?
I can hear you.
Now you're perfect again.
Not hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you good. Yeah.
Okay. And so we looked at these things and then compared them to JCI. So how was JCI? How do we do in terms of advocating? How do we do in terms of adapting to the environment around us? How do we do in terms of strong succession of leadership, sharing information from year to year. Those are the types of things that we tried to look at strategically of how do we fix these things, or how do we make them better? How do we expand upon the things that are working well? And ultimately that may come back to a question of dues, and do we have enough to the resources that our members want, the activities that our members want, they need, that they expect. Are we charging enough, and whether we get that from dues or other outside fundraising opportunities, how do we do all of this? And so finances were not a specific topic, but it was kind of woven through everything else. And we did for sure look at, as I said, other organizations, high performing nonprofit organizations, and I learned the lessons that they have already learned, so we don't have to recreate the wheel.
And I think one of the things that that I hope that you will take, the strategies still have to be approved of World Congress. One thing I learned in business is that a strategy without a budget is just a dream that will never happen. So I hope that you are courageous enough to at least start a debate on how we finance our organization. I also think that
we did. One of the strategies invest is making sure that whatever plans that we make are funded by the budget. However
exactly.
that
exactly. One of the other things that I noticed is and I always we've had this discussion many times in Europe. For instance, we have JCI Germany. I love JCI Germany, and Austria was also a big national organization back in the times. But we need to compare ourselves. When we compare ourselves, we need to compare ourselves with the right things, because otherwise we'll just compare apples and pears, and it won't really make a huge difference for us. As you know, I'm a what do you call JCI fanatic. I think we should do our JCI mission and nothing but the mission. So I don't think about impact. I don't think about being a voice. I just think about creating development opportunities that empower young people. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. So of course, for me, comparison organizations will more be universities, other development organizations that has a focus on developing their members, not the community. But that's a completely different story. Stephanie has a question related to the strategy, which is about, did you talk about organization structure? Do we need a different organization than we have today was that part of your discussion?
Well, that's a huge question. The answer is yes. We did talk about organizational structure. What the answer is determined, I suppose. But yeah, I think that we absolutely have to look at our organizational structure, because the way that we are formed, the way that we are created, the way that we are structured is very hierarchical, and served a purpose 50 years ago. For sure, it was built because the most efficient way to send information was from a headquarters to national organizations and to local organizations. Nowadays, we have such communication and ways of sharing information that structure is not needed for that purpose. And a lot of what we do is still based on sharing information through this very methodical, hierarchical structure. And we're finding that it's very frustrating for our local members that they're not getting the information, they're not getting the tools, they're not getting the resources, they're not being reached this hierarchical structure. And they're getting frustrated because then when they try to share ideas, or when they try to do something new, or they try to go up, they bump their head against these hierarchical structures, the roadblocks that are in their way. So yeah, so what's the answer? Frankly, I'm not afraid to just blow it all up and start all over again. I know that's a cool idea, and a lot of people will be very opposed to that. I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying I'm not afraid to do it. But for sure, I think as an organization, that's one of the things when we talk about adapting to the environment that we're in. Does our current structure, is it interesting? Is it relatable to the current generation of young people? Ultimately, I think the answer is no. But that's something that we have to really look at and we have to discuss. We caught up in we just like to discuss and discuss and discuss, and then 5 years later we're still discussing the same thing that we started 5 years ago. So we have to be, we have to discuss productively, and then try and take action, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but that's part of taking chances and taking opportunities. So
Can you hear me now? Is that better? Better? That was me cutting myself off. I am back. I am back. Hey. Oh, I just said a lot of shit, so I'm really glad you didn't hear me. One of the things I said was I really hope that we could have a lot of more rebels in JCI, and we could actually and that JCI will allow national organizations and local organizations really to focus on doing whatever they think is best. To run in their environment and test different formats of the organization, because our purpose is to create development opportunities that empower young people, not necessarily to build organizational structures and sit on the board if it doesn't make any sense. I've been training the JCI Academy for 11 years, having the incoming national presidents as part of it. And I always tell them that, the biggest problem JCI have is actually you guys. I think that most countries would be much would be much better off if they didn't have a national organization, because sometimes they're just making more troubles and taking up a lot of energy instead of really building really strong local organizations and focusing on that. So sometimes I would say have a national president who could run your national meetings, and the rest just be up to the local organizations and really empower them instead. I visited a national organization not a long time ago, 200 members, less than 200 members, and 38 people on the national board. That doesn't make any sense. That's kind of stupid. It's not even, it has absolutely, there's nothing real into it. Sorry for muting myself and just being here miming to you. That was not my purpose. But thank you very much for your answers so far, Don. Sylvie had a question earlier on what actions will make a local organization strong. I just want to give you a very quick overview of something we're going to cover. I think in the April session is the 9 principles of great chapters, and I have just an overview here. I'll just show it to you, and then Don will be back. We can discuss some of it in a few seconds or a few minutes. I'll just very quickly run through it here. So let me just turn my screen on. My screen now. Can everybody see my screen? Just one type yes. I'll love to hear that. So you can see my screen. Well, I think that there are 9 principles of great local organizations that can really make a difference if you work with them in your local organization, and if you as national officers really help your local organizations do that. And the 9 principles are pretty simple. We put them together in Denmark. We had a lot of chapters who had problems, and we said, why don't we see if we can do a few things that will really help them? And the first one is for your local organizations really to know their business, know what kind of business they're knowing that this organization is about providing development opportunities that empower young people to create positive change, and that is really the key to it. And they shouldn't do anything else than just that. Second thing is that we are not an organization for everyone. It's not just people between 18 and 40. It's the right people, the talents of today and the leaders of tomorrow. Because if we bring everyone into the organization, we know what will happen. In the US, 30 years ago, actually 40 years ago, they were getting close to being 500,000 members just in the United States, and they wanted to be 1 million members. So they started recruiting everyone. So they started out with an organization with the talents of today and the leaders of tomorrow, and then they just started recruiting widely. And they brought in everything from secretaries, unemployed people, truck drivers, whatever. They took them into the organization. And that meant that the good people left and the bad people stayed. So we really need to make sure that we understand that our target group is not for everyone. It's like Harvard University. It's not for everyone. It's not just because you want to go there, you can get there. You also need to have the talent and the things to do that. So really being picky of who you really want as your target audience. I know that JCI is focusing a lot on the Sustainable Development Goals, and to be frankly, I don't care about them. I just care about the development goals of our members. Because that's the only thing that we're put in this world to provide development opportunities that will empower our members. So we need to focus on their development goals, not on United Nations development goals. And a local organization that does this with success is really strongly focused on its members' development goals. It's also about active learning. When we see a lot of local organizations meeting, they keep their members inactive. They put them into a room, give them a lecture for an hour, and then they go home. You don't learn anything, and you don't become a better leader by doing that. You do that by really keeping them active and making sure that they work. One of the things Dupal is actually asking about the continuity in leadership, and that is what on the local level we always have to think that the past plus the present equals the future. So we need to make sure that we remember that even though you're the current president of your national organization or your local organization, you need to remember that you need to learn from the past, but you also need to remember that everything you do today will concern the future leadership. So you always have to think to learn from the past and always grow something for the future, and not just harvesting every year. So that's continuity in leadership, really having this trinity of leaders, the deputy local president, the local president, and the past president, really working closely together on bringing both experience and new ideas and current leadership into a very strong triangle. The next one can seem ridiculous, but when you travel, and I know that Dawn will agree with me, when you travel, sometimes we just meet at crappy places. And if we want to attract the best and the brightest of the young people, we need to meet at great places. We need to really make sure that we challenge ourselves of being the organization in your city that meets at the greatest place. Even Rotary or the other organizations, you'd be envious at where you meet. And I think it's one of the thing that is very easy to deal with, but it's also one of the things that really can make a difference on a local level. If you invite new members and if you invite them to the back room of a bar, will they really take you seriously? The seventh principle is focus on action. That we focus on really taking the action that is really focusing on action is the only thing that will really empower your members. You don't get empowered just by listening. You don't get empowered by talking. You do it on action. So if you want to learn leadership, you need to lead. If you want to learn management, manage a budget, manage a project. If you want to learn how to sell more products in your own business or grow your business, you need to go out there and be the one who is responsible for targeting sponsors and other things. And then we need to build in the local chapter, we need to build a supported network of young people that actually helps each other achieve their dreams. So that in every meeting, every member should leave with having helped others members to achieve their dreams, so advance their plans, but also having advanced their own plans. And the last but not least is we need to actively recruit. And by actively recruiting, I actually mean never, never, ever. Sorry, guys, but never, ever invite your friends. Because normally what happens when you start inviting your friends into JCI, you look at who you like and not who has the right quality of really being the potential mayor or business leader in your city. So really recruiting those who have the talent and those who have the capacity, and not just because you like them. I think that's the worst thing that you can do, and certainly it becomes a circle of friends who will not necessarily benefit, and they will lose focus of what this organization is all about, which is to provide development opportunities that empower young people to create positive change. So these are 9 principles. We'll get much more into them the next time. Still here. I'm here. Dawn is still here somewhere. We have Dupal was asking, what are the 3 key actions that national organization must take to ensure succession of leadership? Dawn, do you have any thoughts on that, or do you want to argue with me on the 9 principles? Or
I'm certainly not going to argue with you, but I want to reinforce one of the things that you said that so many of our organizations get wrong, that we are not the organization for everybody. Everybody can join, but it's not the right place for everybody. And it's okay to be selective. It's okay to set standards for membership, for engagement, for activation. One of the things that I see in most organizations that are struggling is, and to be perfectly honest, I see this in the US a lot. And the analogy that we used to be the organization that people aspired or they wanted to be a part of, and now we're the organization that people go to when they don't have anywhere else to join. Don't be that organization. As a local organization, if that's what you're doing, if you see that, and it's for local organizations to recognize that. One of the things that we don't do enough of, I think, is our own self-reflection. And thinking strategically, thinking honestly, not just about what we think about our organization or about what we think, but what really does the community think of us, and how really does the community see us? And I had that conversation with, I don't know how many national and local organizations around the world last year, when they were asking, what can we do to be more relevant? How can we grow? What can we do to recruit more members, to get more people to join us? And ultimately, that becomes the key of how really does your community see you? And the honest answer is usually not how you think the community sees you. And if you can honestly answer, how does the community see you? Then you can answer the question of, why are we not growing? And just because the community sees you in one way doesn't mean that you can't fix it. I mean, you have to recognize the issue or recognize the problem to be able to fix it or to move forward. And so, as national organizations, again, if your local organizations aren't engaged in coming to a national convention or aren't talking to you as a national board, ask yourselves why. How do the local organizations see us as a national board? And it probably will take some time. It'll probably be hard. You probably won't like the answers, but those will be the honest answers that you need to overcome the issues and to ultimately grow as a local organization. And it's not easy. It's
No.
it's hard, and we don't want to do it because we don't want to admit our flaws, or we don't want to admit that things aren't going well, or and to be honest, again, these are the things that as a national organization, as a national president, as a national board, that it's not only okay, it's wanted that you talk to your assigned. They come in to visit with you. These are some of the things that they can help you with strategically to give you an outside perspective of how is your board functioning, how is your board working with your local organizations, and how are we communicating, how are we as a team, how are we as a national organization. And when I traveled as the world president, when I was EVP, or as vice presidents, I know that you want to show the best. You want them to think that everything's good, that everything's okay. But that's not productive for our organization. If you hide all of the messy things, if you hide all of the bad things, then how can we help you? How can we move forward as an organization? And so, as much as you want to show off the best and the brightest and how good everything, sometimes it's okay to just have a heart-to-heart conversation and say, you know what? This isn't going well. I'm really struggling as a national president, as a national officer, as a local officer, whatever it is. And, those are the conversations that honestly I treasured the most in my travels last year. And they're not the conversations I had or the roundtable discussions or the, standing in front of a group talking. They're the conversations that I had sharing a drink after a meeting, or just sitting around a table over dinner or over lunch and having an individual one-on-one conversation, and just somebody pouring their heart out saying, I love this organization and I believe in it, but it's just not going well and I don't know what to do. Sorry, did I ramble there for too long?
No, you didn't. It was absolutely right. And one of the things I just love you said was, don't be the trash bin for young people. Don't be the place where people will go just because that's the only place the door is always open. And be a place where the door is always open, but you can only stay if you really grow, and if you really take the mission into your heart and say that I want to be the best person I can be. I love the slogan of "Be Better," because I think that's what we need to. That's what a JCI member needs to think of every morning, is say, how can I be better today? How can I be better in my business? How can I be better as a father? How can I be better in my community? How can I be better in doing whatever I do? And I think that if we're an organization that actually, then it doesn't really matter what level you enter. But if you always have that as a focus, that I want to continuously improve, from being a first day member in a local organization to being the past president of JCI, is something that creates actually, and the fun part of it is it really creates great lives when you have that focus every day of being better. Marius is asking us a question about how he, as a national board member, can help how he best can help to strengthen the local organizations. And well, we discussed it a little bit earlier, and I think one of the greatest things you can do is, one, is stop telling them what to do, because they know best, but asking how can you help them, because I think that's the most important things. I see a lot of local organizations where they say, oh, we have to fill in these reports to our national organization. I say, why? Ah, but we have to. No, you don't have to do anything. This is a volunteer organization. You can just say, go somewhere where you don't want to be. We're not doing this. We are here to provide development opportunities that empower the young people of our local chapter. And I think if you, Marius, can help them having that focus, that everything they should do, if it doesn't add value towards our mission, if it doesn't help them provide development opportunities that will empower the local members, then they shouldn't do it. I come to meetings where they say, we have these young people. I remember in the US, Don, you visited some of those local chapters as well, where they stand up and they stand like this and they say, we believe that faith in God gives meaning and purpose to human life, and they recite the creed, and you just see the young members who just joined and the young people coming in. The only thing they look for is the escape. How can I get out of this room, because they think it's a cult. And when you then ask them, why do you do this? They say, well, we've always done that. But stop it. It doesn't make any sense. Don't do things that are stupid just because we've always done them. Because as you said, we need to stay relevant for the young people. We need to make sure that we use the new technology to empower them, that we use their ways of media and communication. And that might not be Robert rules of order in every meeting. Why not do rocking rules of order, or something else that will keep dynamics up and will make sure that we really empower those who are in the room to really develop themselves as leaders. One advice that you would give to a national board member of helping the local organizations, Don?
Yeah, I think I don't know that I have much to add from what you just talked about, Lars, but it also just kind of goes back about earlier to help them understand their own community, their own environment, and not always the environment of the commit of their chapter, of what is the mix of members. Is it all just a big group of friends? Because not only one of the downfalls of starting to invite your friends is that it gets very cliquish. I'm not sure if that word translates, but you get these groups of people that only talk to the people that they know, because you've all known each other for 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is. And then somebody new comes in and they feel like an outsider, because they are an outsider, because they don't know all of the stories that you guys have shared your entire lives, or when you were college roommates together, or started your first job together, or whatever it is. And so to be inclusive, to be diverse. Another thing that we talked about during the strategic planning committee is about diversity. And it seems silly to talk about diversity in an international organization, because of course we're diverse. We're in 120 different countries, and we have 4 official languages, and when we come to our international events, we have 100 different languages being spoken, all of this diversity, and that's true. But in your local organization, how diverse do you honestly represent the diversity of your community? In the US, a lot of our chapters are middle-class white Americans, not representative of America. That's the way that our organization has evolved. Some of the most there were 2 organizations that I visited that I actually were some of my favorite organizations that I visited last year. One was in New York City and one was in Copenhagen. And they were two chapters that were comprised of JCI members from around who had moved to that particular location and formed their own JCI and formed a new JCI chapter. And it was this incredibly diverse environment of people who came from so many different backgrounds, but they shared the same love of JCI because they had a background in JCI. Now, you obviously can't create a nation like that. I understand that. But the point is to understand the diversity within your organization, and does it represent the people that you're trying to attract? Now, there's also something to be said, for example, in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, there is a Kuala Lumpur Mandarin chapter. Or, one of the chapters in Hong Kong is, or there's actually a couple that are female only chapters. And so there's something to be said for that as well. But you have to understand, is that the type of environment that you're trying to create, or are you trying to that is reflective of your community? And if it's reflective of your community, then you have to be, again, be honest with yourselves of what are we doing that is enabling or hindering that as a local organization. And so as a national, that's a long story. I know I kind of got off on a tangent there, but as a national officer, really your best value to a local organization, facilitator, is to facilitate the conversation. Like you said, Lars, don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them what they need to do, because one, they're generally not going to be receptive. And two, I mean, they're the ones who know their community, but be a facilitator of the conversation. Prompt them with questions. Ask the hard questions, but also help them find the answers. And then you can come around in a productive way to understanding what the core issue that's hindering growth, because most of the time it's not what they think. There's something bigger, there's something deeper, there's something more, there's something hidden there that's hindering their growth or that's hindering their opportunities. And so as a national officer, you can, as you be a facilitator, you can help them find that and help them overcome it.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Let's that be the end of our conversation this evening. I put out a poll there. It would be great if you answer it. We see that there is at least one or two that is in love. Some really liked it. One said it was okay. I think those who didn't like it probably left. So that's very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a good news for you, which is that on April 10th at 8 o'clock at night, the next JCI Grow to Greatness will be here. So please join me then. I will have a very exciting guest. We'll let you know. Please make sure that you invite as many people as you can to this webinar, but we will also send you a link that you are very, very, very welcome to share with everyone so that they can re-see the interview from tonight. I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot out there who would love the advice from President Dawn that she gave us today. So thank you very much, Dawn. Enjoy it in wonderful Michigan, probably a bit colder than where we were last week in Bangkok, Thailand. So I had the wonderful opportunity of being with President Dawn at the JCI ASPAC Senate Golf Tournament last week, where we both excelled on the greens for at least a couple of days and had some fun and met a lot of great friends. So that's why we postponed the JCI Grow to Greatness 1 week. It's normally the second Tuesday of the month. So on April 10th, please invite your members at 8 o'clock CET. Thank you very much for tonight. Go out there, make it great. I'm absolutely sure that you will be doing fantastic. So enjoy it. And remember, It's March. There's only 9 months left of the year. You really have to hurry, no matter what you do in JCI. Thank you.
Thanks all. Good night.